China, Tesla, NIO, Zeekr, in that order. But we're going to start with China. And by the way, if you want to jump around, this will be a longer video probably. So look down below, click the more button, get into the description, or look at the bottom of the screen, and you'll see the breakdown of different subjects in case you want to jump around and don't want to watch straight through. Thanks. Now let's talk. And let's start here. Darius Dale with the post I retweeted because I'm paying attention to what he says, extremely deep dive researcher. And one of the things he suggested is that he thinks we will see more China stimulus after the US election. That also seems consistent with this. And I thought this was fascinating because Marcel says he was thinking that the end of October is when we would see stimulus. But if it's in fact November 4th through the 8th, that is aligned with and sort of in the time frame of maybe just following the US election, which, let's face it, could be crazy. We're living in crazy times after all. So I think that's smart on the part of China. It also means I'm going to sit back and watch and keep monitoring things in this like super short term. Now let's talk Tesla. And this, a couple of tweets by Brian T. I appreciate this. You know, he actually shared some of the things I was thinking. This is one of the tweets. This is the other one. And my thought with this was, you know, Tesla doing well, as long as there are tariffs in regions like the US and in Europe to slow the Chinese EV expansion outside of China, I do think Tesla remains in a competitive advantage situation because they don't have a lot of other brands that can really compete with them outside of China. Now, I do think we'll see some things shift in the Middle East. And so that will be interesting to watch play out. But then also, I think the US election and the results from that could also factor in here. But let's face it, as long as Tesla can keep selling and getting revenue from government subsidies, and as long as the Chinese EV companies are limited in their ability to compete globally, Tesla remains the early mover. By the way, this is the fails to deliver chart for Tesla. This is the whole history. It started trading in 2010, and if you'll note, the white lines, the fails to deliver, were extremely high for a very long time. If you'll also note the yellow, which you can barely even see early on because it was so low, that's the price for Tesla stock. Now, here's my question for those NIO investors who are impatient or think that long-term is 6 months, let's say, or that sort of thing. Are you willing to wait 11 years? NIO has been listed in the US market since 2018. If we go by the timeline that Tesla needed to get to profitability, then that would put us at about 2029 for NIO. Are you willing to wait there? And what do you think the price could be at that point? I guess I'm big on asking myself questions because that helps me get clarity with what I'm doing and if I want to make any change. This has always been a long-term play. I'm talking about NIO, and I do think it will get to profitability much faster than Tesla did. I also think there's more potential upside in some respects, but I think the shorting that's going on now could actually contribute and help the stock price move higher because we've already seen NIO at an earlier stage versus a relative to Tesla move higher. But I also do think that in the super short term, it is still considered a meme stock and could be getting shorted as an EV stock, a Chinese stock, and a meme stock. So final thoughts with Tesla. I'm going to shift back to Tesla briefly because I listened to about a half hour of the earnings call this last time. Now, normally I'll only tune in for about 10 to 15 minutes at the most. And the reason for that is Mr. Overhype is what I call him, Elon Musk. Usually the first 10 minutes of the earnings call, he has pre-selected something to pump, and he focuses on that. Once it was Optimus, and he was saying that everyone globally would want 2 Optimus robots, and I was just like, so crazy that people even take this seriously. And look, it's congratulations. I think it's awesome that people have made so much money with Tesla, whether it's short term, long term, and I love the long term people who were there through the ups and downs all the way to profitability, and who are also weighing in on NIO and are bullish on NIO because they see the long-term prospects. I think we're going to get more of a shaking out of investors and investors versus traders and people who are even frustrated because their idea of long-term is not the view of the man running the company, NIO, and that is William Lee. I call him Mr. EQ. But part of his view, and he's been very clear consistently about this, is long-term. And long-term is years out. So that's why I thought it would be interesting to show the Tesla chart with the fails to deliver so that people could see. And quickly, I'll show you this. This is the NIO chart. Now, if you'll notice earlier, NIO had the drop off of the fails to deliver with the spiking of the stock price. That's something that Tesla didn't have. But what you'll also notice is the fails to deliver started spiking again, and it has taken about 3 years for, I would say, shorts probably to get the stock price down to where it is. And so the question is, when does it go? Do we have to wait for profitability? Is the stimulus going to make a difference? I don't know. Super short term, I've got it on the ticker because I continue to track all that, and I will probably through at least the end of the year in this year of 2024. But I just thought moving back to, the Tesla and showing the Tesla history, the full history with the heavy, dense fails to deliver for so many years. And then when they finally kind of dropped off, you saw that meteoric rise with the stock. Now, to be clear, I don't care and I don't need NIO stock to move anywhere near as high as Tesla did. But that's just some of my take and my thought. I think it's always helpful for me to get a visual on things. And so I just wanted to offer that. Let's talk about sentiment for NIO. And I like that Marcel said this, not so many finance YouTubers covering NIO stock any longer. And I do think the shorting continues to be an issue. I think it will be for, I don't know how long, but that's why I'm tracking the short term and really super short term, just so that we can kind of track it if we do see something crazy with NIO. And I've been asked to drill down and look a little bit more specifically at some of the dates and things like when the NIO stock price started to move up. I think I want to wait longer before we do that. And then maybe I'll do that in a separate video because it's easier once we get more, because this, failed to deliver data is always lagged and delayed. It's easier to look back after the fact. So I do have that in mind, but that's also why I wanted to bring up Zeekr, because Zeekr, and the ticker is ZK for those who don't know, it just started trading in 2024 in May. And I thought this was interesting. The failed to deliver spikes in the volume from the very beginning of this one. Really, really fascinating stuff. And then you see, the stock price trend down. And concept overview wise, it looks, in a very shortened time frame, a little bit like what we've seen with NIO. And then it bottoms here, and then it kind of jumps around, and now it's starting to go up again. Interestingly enough, there's, I don't know if you'd call that a spike, fewer than 50,000 failed to delivers on that day. But let's just wait and see what happens. Also, it's nowhere near what was happening at the beginning. But also, this is why at the bottom of the screen for like short term, super short term price action and stock price action and movement, that's one of the things that I watch. Is the trade volume is one of the things, rather. The second, and not really in this order necessarily, but the fail to deliver, because it's delayed and lagged, we have to wait on that. And then the sentiment. And if sentiment, for example, as Marcel suggests here, that a lot of folks aren't even talking about NIO anymore, is sentiment essentially gone? Are we at a point where maybe the only people really paying attention are those who have done the deep dive research, who truly have the long-term view and lens? I don't have a problem if that's the case, because I know I'm one of those people, but I'm curious to hear from others on what your thoughts are. I also, as an investor, only you, and I'm talking about each of us, can make the decision of whatever works, doesn't work, makes sense for us, and is in line with our goals. Everyone's risk tolerance is different. Mine is extremely high. And part of that is because of the craziness that I've been through in my life. And so I understand that people maybe who thought this was a shorter term play and are frustrated that it hasn't gone up more, or maybe they feel like they missed the opportunity to sell when it was higher. Look, I understand the frustration. I see a lot of the comments, and that's why I continue to monitor the sentiment. It's hard to gauge that, but I do think, as Darius Dale says, momentum matters. And so with sentiment, with momentum, a couple of days this week, I know Tesla, especially after everyone started talking so glowingly about them after their earnings, the trade volume's been incredibly high, and certainly much higher than NIO's. And so again, a nod to that trade volume, and then we'll just see what the FTD data looks like. But just from looking at the screen, it looks to me like we still have a lot of shorting and a lot of FTD, which could be naked shorting going on. And so, big picture overview, I love what NIO is doing as a company. I think it's ultimately just a matter of time before the stock price follows, but I have no idea what that time frame is, which is why I'll keep tracking and monitoring, sharing some of my thoughts in both the short term and the long term view as we go. Anyway, thanks for sticking around. If you made it to the end, have a great day. Have a great weekend. I'll see you all again very soon.